Following on from the first 3 episodes, I'm continuing to gradually work my way into this Contax 137MA, which had been damaged by a severe battery leakage. I'll put links to the previous episodes down in the description. The next thing to come off is the first curtain gear, which, somewhat surprisingly, is free to just lift off, rather than needing to be soaked in vinegar for half an hour or so. As with the gear above, it has a washer beneath it which can be cleaned and put to one side ready for reassembly. Next is the gear on top of the second curtain shaft. This is secured with a grub screw into the side of the gear, and it's a little tricky to undo because the shaft just wants to rotate. Once out, the gear should simply lift off the shaft, but as you might expect by now, it's a bit stuck to the shaft, so I'll give it some vinegar and return in a minute or two. And with a bit of vinegar and persuasion, it's off. The same applies to the first curtain shaft gear. One grub screw and it should lift off. But even the grub screw is stuck on this one, so I'll do battle with that off camera and return in one moment. Right, now that one's off, it should be a little easier. There's a screw to remove from the start cam on the first curtain shaft. This is the cam that sits between the 2 plates. And 3 screws to remove from the top plates, the rearmost screw being countersunk. And then these top plates should lift off. As always, putting up a bit of a fight along the way. And the first curtain start cam that I slackened off a minute ago can also come off now. Then there's another of those annoying grippy clips securing the spring for the tension wheels on the shutter curtain drums. And maybe I won't tempt fate by removing another of these on camera. The spring can then lift off, making sure it doesn't head off into orbit, along with the 2 ratchet wheels themselves. These have a squared hole to engage with the rod beneath, and both had a blob of glue on top to keep them in place. And lastly, these 2 posts that secure the top plate down to the uprights. But both of these are corroded solid at the moment, and I don't want to damage the posts if I can avoid it. So I'll proceed with caution and maybe a bit of vinegar, heat and oil along the way. Well, the post that had the shutter tension ratchet spring on it loosened off okay, but the other one is totally solid. I've already heard it crack a bit, which isn't it coming loose, it's part of the slotted top splitting, so I can't put much force on it at all. I'll keep putting it through heat cycles and hopefully it'll eventually come off. To give myself a bit more room, I've removed the nylon gear that sat beneath the first curtain gear. It was a bit of a struggle to get it off, and you can see all the corrosion on the shaft that it runs on. With the spring off as well, I can get a bit more bold with the soldering iron when heating the sticking post. While I'm at it, I'll remove the first curtain latch, because I may need to resort to a blowtorch to free off the post. This one was one of the few components on the camera that wasn't seized solid when I got it. I thought I might try removing the shutter curtains from the bottom, but even that was met with resistance. One of the 2 screws requiring heat, and vinegar, and IPA, and oil, before it would free off. Although the IPA has no effect on the alkaline deposits as such, it does degrease the area very well, allowing the vinegar to work faster. Well, that was kind of successful. Both screws are out, but this side is very much corroded in place, and more significantly, I don't think the first curtain drum will come out past this shouldered section on the upright casting until the long end at the top of the shaft is free. So it's back to that sticking post at the top again. Okay, it's now another day and I've had some time to think. As you can hopefully see with this close-up shot, the post is hollow, with a screw thread cut into the inside and slots for a screwdriver on top. If you put too much force on those slots, the top section simply falls off. You can still screw the upper plate to the post because it's threaded all the way down, but if both halves at the top have fallen off, then there's nothing left to support the top plate. I've applied heat and the usual smattering of chemicals, but I don't use the slots on the top anymore because I've already heard the telltale crack as one of them has partially fractured, and pliers don't grip all that well. If only there was a device that could securely grip onto a round object like this. But it's still no go because the curtain shafts are in the way. I ended up going for brute force and grabbing some bigger pliers with more aggressive serrations. And now, finally that post, along with the curtain tension spring post opposite, are both out, more or less unharmed. I'll dress the burrs on the stuck post before I put it away. So now I can finally remove the top plate. I'm fully expecting the left-hand side to be stuck in place and need a little prying to get it moving. Or maybe just jiggling it a bit will work. The right hand side is already loose and it's definitely moving. And there we go. That didn't take long at all. I could clean up the curtains now, but I think I'll leave that till later and concentrate on the winding mechanism next. There's a lever and a spring to come off at the back here. I don't actually know what this one does at this stage, but it needs to come off regardless. The cam for the frame counter couldn't come off. It's on a squared shaft with the lobe pointing forwards when the disc beneath it is in the latched position. And that disc can also come off now. It's moving, but I'll do that off camera because I really can't get at it from this angle. And that's done. There's now one remaining screw to remove and the top plate should lift off, noting that there's a spring glued to the top plate here. This looks like the spring for the anti-reverse pull on the winding mechanism. And of course nothing is ever simple. Just because the top plate should lift off now doesn't mean that it will lift off. So I'll go away and gently pry at it to see if it will move at all. I've popped that last screw back in for now because a few of the shafts that have bearings into this top plate are seized. So to give me a bit more space to free those off, I'll remove the transfer lever here. I've already removed the spring that went into this post, but the screw is stuck solid, so I'll apply a little heat and return shortly. Well, that was a bit of a burst. Maybe the oil will penetrate over time, but I'll leave the transfer lever in place for now. I have successfully removed the second curtain electromagnet, which allows me to apply vinegar to the bearing beneath it. And then I'll return to trying to remove the top plate once the vinegar has worked its magic. And that's the first lot of gears freed off. I think I need to get them all free before I remove the top plate, because there are some that I need to scribe alignment marks on, so it won't particularly help if they lift out with the top plate when I eventually remove it. And obviously that didn't go to plan. When I lifted the top plate, the gear that has the stop plate on top lifted out, and it's this gear that needs to be indexed to the sprocket gear next to it. However, the sprocket gear was still tight and wouldn't have moved, and I knew the alignment of the other gear because of its squared shaft. I also reassembled the gearbox and checked it against my reference photos, and I'm pretty sure I've got everything back as it should be, so I've scribed it at that. If the alignment of the sprocket gear is incorrect, when you trim the negatives the cut will be in the middle of the perforation rather than in the space between perforations, in which case I'd need to strip the camera apart again and adjust the alignment by one tooth. So now I can start removing the gears and cleaning them up. The first gear is a friction clutch like the one in the lower gearbox. This one doesn't look like it's packed with grease, so maybe it was just gunge in the lower one. The next gear has a one-way clutch, so the winding mechanism doesn't turn when the motor rotates backwards to raise the mirror. I'll get the rest of the gears out and cleaned, and if there's anything of particular interest I'll shoot another video clip. The last gear to come off is the take-up spool drive, which has a screw, and a plate, then a brass washer, and the spool drive dog, followed by another brass washer. Both brass washers have a flat to key them to the gear shaft. Then there's a tension spring, and a C-clip to hold the gear shaft in place, with a washer between the C-clip and the chassis. The tension is adjustable, and the screw was glued in place down the barrel of the gear shaft. I'll just refer to my photos to see the position that it was in and replicate that when I reassemble the thing. Oh, and I finally managed to remove that infuriating transfer lever from the top plate once I could rest the plate on a block of wood and really lean on the screw. That just leaves this guide wheel for the upper ribbon on the first curtain. It looks like a ball race with a plastic tyre around it, held in place by a C-shaped wire clip. However, I noticed when I first took the camera apart that the plastic tyre has a split. If there's corrosion under the tyre, I might be able to clean it up and rejoin it, but I suspect that it's shrinkage of the plastic that's caused it to split. It probably won't make any difference, so long as it doesn't fall off and jam the shutter, but I'll think about that later. And that's the ball race and tyre removed successfully, without losing the C-clip. I'll clean and re-lube the ball race, then put it on one side for now. That now allows me to dunk the two chassis components in the vinegar and get them cleaned up, although I really need to find a bigger tray. Right, it's yet another day and those two chassis sections are cleaned up. It was while I was cleaning them up that I realised how complex they are. If I flip the bigger one over, you've got brass bushes here, here, here and here. Actually, the big one for the take-up spool is brass too. Then there's a brass tube for the sprocket drive. You've got brass posts here, 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 here and here, not to mention two more that are visible from the other side. Then there are steel posts here, here, here and here, all of which need to be manufactured and assembled just to create this one easily overlooked chassis component. So after marvelling at that tiny creation, it's time to start reassembling the thing. After worrying about the split plastic tyre on the shutter ribbon bearing, I took a look at the lower bearing, which also has a split tyre. For a while I again thought that this might be by design rather than a failure, but looking at the footage I'm now back thinking that the plastic has cracked. However, it is purely a piece of plastic to bring an off-the-shelf ball race up to the correct width to support the shutter ribbon. So having cleaned and re-oiled the bearing, I think I'll just install it and forget about it. I could deliberate for hours on which grease or oil to use where, but for the film take-up gear bearing I'll just use a bit of molly grease and bung it together. Once all the bits are assembled, I'll take a look at my reference shots to gauge the tension for the spring, also judging it by feel, before gluing the end of the screw again. Well, that looks and feels about right, so I'll just pop a blob of glue or lacquer on the end of the screw thread and get on with the next gear. I won't show every gear going back in. Needless to say, I'll be lubricating the heavier duty gear shafts with grease and the light duty stuff with oil, and I'll return in a bit with the completed thing. And one completed winding assembly. I've popped the rewind latch lever and this wire clip back on because their screws hold the upper and lower chassis plates together. Next I can refit the transfer lever that was such a pain to get off earlier. I might also drop on the stop plate so I can check the alignment of the sprocket holes before I go too much further. I've tacked that chassis section into the body of the camera, and if I lay some film over the sprocket drum, the perforations are sitting correctly so that the film will cut between the holes rather than straight through the holes, so that's another small win. Okay, that's a few more components reinstalled. The positioning of the electromagnet may well need tweaking, so I won't lacquer the screws in place yet. The next thing to install is the shutter curtain assembly, and I haven't cleaned that up yet. So this feels like a good time to end the video. I'll try to bring you another update fairly soon, and with a bit of luck we'll get on to some exciting bits before too long. If you've enjoyed watching, please like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel, not forgetting to click on the bell icon so you don't miss out on the next thrilling episode. That's it for now, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a future video.